Democratic strategists are starting to look into how to protect the majority in the 2022 midterms. So now I say majority, but in reality, I mean, it's too close. We got a 50-50 split, and Democrats that aren't exactly acting like we think they should. And by we, I mean those of us on the left. Now, according to a report from Politico, there seems to be a debate within the Democratic Party over strategy over the 2022 midterm election. So now their choices run on policy or Donald Trump. Well, I mean, I'm going to tell you what I think we should do, but let me read from the article. According to one Democrat, Donald Trump may help them with their decision by continuing to keep himself front and center as the face of the party, doing their work for them, and constantly reminding voters of the reason he lost re-election in 2020. Something tells me that, of course, they don't quite understand the reason that he lost in 2020. I believe that it was mainly as a result of his response to coronavirus. COVID-19 wrecked Donald Trump's campaign. Again, he wasn't able to go out and do a lot of his rallies, not without creating gigantic super spreader events. But again, his handling, his downplaying, as hundreds of thousands of people ended up dying across the country as a result of COVID-19. I mean, that right there cemented it in people's minds. His ignorance was dangerous and is dangerous for the country. I said before, when he got elected, God forbid, if you believe in that, I don't, but God forbid, if he ever has a real crisis. And then we found out we ended up having a real crisis, something that was so incredibly mismanaged that it ended up leading to 500,000 people dying from a virus. And so, yeah, that's the reason that he lost. Big reason. It wasn't anything else. Again, it wasn't the racism. It wasn't the sexism. It wasn't the xenophobia. It wasn't any of that. It wasn't the stupid tweets, the stuff that he said. Again, that stuff endeared him to people, believe it or not. And so, especially for members of the right, it got them fired up, and they were really interested in following him and voting for him. And so, anyway, that said, there are Democrats in districts they say could flip back to Republicans should the party fire up Trump's rabid base with attacks on the one-term ex-president. So now this is, again, what Politico is saying. This is Melania Zanona and Sarah Ferris writing this article. Quote, with their fragile House majority on the line, many Democrats are employing their colleagues not to take the Trump bait after last November's referendum on the ex-president ended up costing their party a dozen seats. So now, wait a minute. The Democrats are saying, you've got Democrats out there saying, no, let's not talk about Trump. Let's talk about something else. Well, goddamn. If this is true, wonderful. Now, those Democrats, they write, are eager to deploy a policy-heavy playbook to help stave off a potential midterm whipping and are careful to avoid putting Trumpism on the ballot next November, too. So now, again, they're doing this because they're afraid of Trump's base. Okay, look, I don't really give a damn about your reason, because if you're going to focus on policy, wonderful. Yes. Policy matters. And of course, messaging, how do you message that policy matters as well. Like, for example, how's this going to help you? How's this going to help your family? How's this going to make your life better? What can we do? And I'm going to give you some stats here later on. But yes, as far as policy goes, look, Democrats, they're milquetoast on policy, on a lot of the stuff that they're talking about. Well, not necessarily what they're talking about, but what they're trying to actually do. And let me give you an example of that. So Joe Biden ran on a public option. And I think a public option is good. Medicare for all is obviously superior. That is where we need to go, 100%. However, we're not even talking about the public option anymore. What we're talking about is tweaks to Obamacare. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to milk toast. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. Making the big promises, and even those promises are huge. A public option is something that we should have had for a long time. Should have had from all the way back during the discussion about the ACA, where there was a Democratic supermajority. And so, despite that, though, out of the two party, obviously the Democrats have the better policies. Why? Because Republicans, tax cuts for the rich, deregulation, more military spending. Again, with the Democrats, you get, well, you still end up getting some deregulation, especially when it comes to the banks. Yes, tax cuts, which tend to more include the middle class, but then, also more military spending. And so economically, they really need to do a lot better on the Democratic side to differentiate themselves from Republicans on some of those basic economic issues. Social issues is where there seems to be the greatest distance between Republicans and Democrats. That said, messaging. I want to talk about messaging. Democrats suck at messaging. But when they made the message, not about Trump, but about policy positions, they actually did well in 2018. So there, yeah. Now, if we're going to go, here's what I want to do for you. Here's how we're going to get it done. I'm on board. All right, let's do it. Wonderful. But that gets to the thorny problem. If you actually want to do it. And we're not exactly, on the leftists, we're not convinced Democrats want to do some of these big things. Right now, let me give you an example. We have a chance to cancel student loan debt. Joe Biden can do it unilaterally. With a stroke of a pen, Joe Biden can cancel any amount of student debt he wants to. He can cancel 10,000, he can cancel 50,000, he can cancel the whole damn enchilada. He could do it right now. Just tell his Secretary of Education, cancel all that debt. Gone. Congress, by the way, could also do something when it comes to the price of prescription drugs. Could also do something when it comes to healthcare. Now, of course, that's not unilateral. There is, you'd have to go through Congress, and that has, well, there are some problems there. Okay, there's some problems there. But the thing is, and what I want to mention prescription drugs and healthcare is because, according to polls, that's the number one issue facing Americans today. That is the one thing that most Americans, an overwhelming majority, want Congress to do something about. So now, I think it's kind of a no-brainer to come up with a piece of legislation, for example, a Bernie Sanders bill that he's brought up plenty of times in the Senate, to allow people to at least go and get import cheaper drugs from Canada, and to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices with pharmaceutical companies. I think that would be a beginning. Obviously, the real solution to this is Medicare for all. So you would have the full power of the government being able to, as the only provider of health insurance, to be able to negotiate for cheaper prices. Unfortunately, they're not doing any of that. And so, yeah, as far as Republicans, okay, so here's what I would do if I were Democrats and actually cared, right? So, all right, do something on prescription drugs, all right? You bring that up to a vote, and then let Republicans kill it. Well, now, wait a minute. What do you mean let Republicans kill it? Well, because Republicans will. And then what you have to do is you have to put Republicans on the record for killing a bill and let them explain to their voters why insulin is still $1,200 for a month's supply. Again, no riders, just like, hey, negotiate for prices on prescription drugs. Let people import it from Canada, someplace cheaper. Simple as that. You don't have to add anything, poison pills, nothing to that, ironic poison pills, to that bill. And then let Republicans explain why they killed it. And while they're doing that, you explain how Republicans are beholden to their donors in the pharmaceutical industry and that we need people who aren't bought and paid for. And now I realize, of course, that the pharmaceutical companies and why this isn't going to happen, there's a lot of donors that, or I should say there's a lot of Democrats that get a lot of donations from these same pharmaceutical companies. But hey, if they were to take this strategy and actually, I don't know, ignore the donors for once, you might actually keep winning. But yeah, that's one part of the discussion. The other part, of course, is no, let's focus on Trump. Let's focus on January 6th because of the commission. They voted against the commission. Again, super obvious thing for Republicans to do, because if you didn't notice, Republicans are anti-democracy. It's not hard to figure it out when you see all the stuff that they do. They despise democracy. But so far in this discussion, the let him hang himself crowd is pretty well represented. The let Trump do what he's going to do. Let's not focus on him. Let's not care about him. Let's focus on talking about policy. In fact, here's one representative, Stephanie Murray, who faces a tough re-election fight in Florida, where Trump is popular. She would rather the Democratic Party not attack Trump. Quote, the former president is now a private citizen, and it appears our justice system is handling whatever potential misdeeds he may or may not have committed. Trump is a Republican problem and a Republican cancer that they need to cut out of their party, but that's their problem. Oh, I would say that Donald Trump is the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is more akin to the cancer, but I get it. I get it. Okay, that's not an unreasonable point of view. Representative Madeline Dean also noted that Trump will likely remain in the news due to his legal problems, allowing Democrats to let the news cycle do their work for them, and allowing them to focus on pummeling their Republican opponents instead, which again, I hope includes policy positions. Senator Ben Ray Lujan, I'm probably saying his name wrong, a Democrat of New Mexico, who was the architect of the Democrats' House takeover in 2018, that was focused on the threat of healthcare and less on the now ex-president, says Trump may do their dirty work for them. Even when President Trump was president, people got tired of hearing about him. He explained before noting the one-term president can be his own worst enemy. Quote, Trump puts his foot in his mouth more than anybody else. Let him do the talking. People are going to see him for what he is. Yeah, look, I get it. Let Trump be Trump. Basically give him the rope and let him hang himself while you go out and talk about, policy positions. Wonderful. Okay, yeah, let's do that. Now, it is fun. The aside thing is that it is kind of weird that they're like, well, we know the media is going to attack Donald Trump, and so we're just going to let the media do our job. That's a little weird. And the reason I say that, because imagine if that was the same situation with, for example, you had a Democrat, Bernie Sanders, for example. Oh, wait, this doesn't even have to be an example because it's already happened, where you had the entire media establishment attacking Bernie Sanders. And so it is a bit of a problem here. So, yeah, just saying, it makes me a little uncomfortable. Let's just say that. That said, all right. If you're going to do, though, if you're just going to focus on policy, that's great. Making it all about Trump is not going to win the midterms. And it is actually nice to see that some Democrats in power are actually, starting to realize that. Because that's how you win. We should be focused on infrastructure. We should be focused on healthcare. We should be focused on canceling student debt. We should be focused really on climate change. Because if you thought COVID-19 was bad, and it was, wait till you get a load of climate change. That's going to rock our shit. Supreme Court, like packing the Supreme Court, term limits, getting out of these, wars, stopping the imperialism, all this different stuff. We have a lot of things that we need to talk about as a country. We should probably ignore talking about Trump as a politician. So, and that's, again, and you could just even go back to campaign promises Joe Biden has already made, right? That he's not following through on. But also realize, by the way, that is a component that they're missing. It's about what they've done and what they have failed to do. They did a decent job on COVID-19, I think, the Biden administration. I think the aid could have been, to people, it could have been a lot more. We were promised $2,000 checks, recurring. Not even recurring. We should have had $2,000 checks recurring until the end of the pandemic. We had one. We had one $1,400 check and unemployment benefits. Come on. It could have been a lot more. And there was that lie involved. But again, as far as getting the trains running, the Biden administration has been fairly competent, unlike, of course, the Trump administration. But on other issues, Democrats are refusing to eliminate the filibuster in order to actually enact other things. And there are two main holdouts. You got Joe Manchin and you got Kyrsten Sinema. Now, Joe Manchin is playing this, we need to be more bipartisan. We need to have Republicans to have a seat at the table. So, we could do things in a bipartisan way. It's better for the country. Nope, not at all. No, again, this guy, he's either a closet Republican, which I think he is, or he's so incredibly, deeply naive. He's not going to get anything done. And as a result, they're probably going to sink the Democratic Party. Now, hopefully, as more Democrats come around to the idea, especially after Republicans blocked the January 6th commission, that there are enough Democrats to bully Joe Manchin, but I don't think that's going to happen. Honestly, what I do know is that if he continues not to budge, the slim majority the Democrats have, it's going to evaporate. It's gone. And likely the decision, by the way, whether or not to focus on policy or Donald Trump for the midterms will also be made for them. If Joe Manchin doesn't move and he says, no, I'm not going to blow up the filibuster, then all the Democrats from now up until the midterms, Trump. And that's it. No policy discussions, because if they do that, they're backed into a corner because they haven't done anything, because we haven't got, a public option. We don't have a student loan debt relief. We don't have any of those things. And who are the voters going to blame? Well, Democrats, obviously, for not getting things done. So that's going to be a bloodbath, an absolute bloodbath. Say goodbye to the majority, which means, by the way, absolutely no chance of getting anything done, as opposed to there being at least a small chance, small as it is right now. So none of this is going to mean anything unless you bully Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and obliterate the filibuster. And until I see Biden and top Democratic leadership urging that and doing that and punishing Manchin by, doing the nuclear option, by the way, not funding his campaign for re-election through DNC money. Until I see any of that, any real action against him, nothing's going to happen, and I will forever remain a complete and utter pessimist. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.